We appreciate your taking out time and joining us for this, hopefully, quite an insightful webinar, looking at the experience of the panel that we have here. My name is Rajiv. I have the easiest job in the panel today, which is to ask a few questions and then let the experts share their experiences or answer on those questions. Uh, Thank you, first of all, Lumina Learning India, for organizing this and the choice of the topic, which is navigating personality traps to coach without bias. As you will observe, the focus is on coach and not on coachee, which is so often the case. And I think it's really important and that we do some self-reflection as professionals on ourselves. We have an esteemed panel of three very experienced coaches. All of them also come with rich industry experience. Let me introduce them in the alphabetical order. So we have Jayashri. Jayashri Braganza is a leadership facilitator, executive coach, and psychotherapist, enabling transformation globally for individuals, teams, and organizations. Her unique cross-functional corporate experience across sales, marketing, operations, OD consulting, and L&D enables her to appreciate varying business contexts. She wields the right blend of strategic nudges and nurturing support that drive powerful insights and a clear growth path. Jayashri holds a postgraduate management degree in human resources, a graduate degree in psychology, ICF PCC coaching credential, diploma in transactional analysis, psychotherapy, and training in several other modalities like NLP and psychodrama. She is also certified in Lumina, Belvin, and Hogan, to name a few. So thank you so much, Jayashri. Welcome. Next, let me take the opportunity to introduce Dr. Murali Padmanabhan, although he prefers to be called Murali. Murali is a learning nomad with a strong addiction to learn about human behavior, especially in groups. He meandered into leadership development accidentally. After earning a PhD in mathematics, he found his calling in technology training and then metamorphosized into a leadership development professional. He earned his coaching credentials in 2011 from ICF and has been coaching internally in various organizations. He started as an external professional coach in 2021 and has coached senior professionals in various industries like banking, healthcare, IT, and technology manufacturing. His endeavor is to develop leadership excellence through human centered insights. By integrating the powerful tools of psychodynamics, psychodrama, and emotional intelligence, he is able to develop a professionally intimate relationship with his clients to explore the complexities of human behavior, develop an empathetic understanding, and unlock their full potential to drive organizational success. Thank you so much, Murli, for joining us. Welcome. And last but not the least, we have Preeti Guruswamy. Preeti is an executive coach and leadership facilitator with more than 25 years of experience in the technology industry, managing global teams and driving tech solutions. She specializes in enabling executive leaders to drive transformation, innovation, and meaningful impact. Her expertise in emotional intelligence and collective intelligence helps leaders build their strategic muscle, navigate complexity with clarity, and make high impact decisions. She serves as a board advisor in Lean in Global Foundation, guiding leadership strategies for community building. She actively fosters inclusive and visionary leadership spaces as a committee member of ICF Chennai's DEIB pillar and a core committee member of the Bangalore hub of IAF. Believing in the power of community, Preeti is the founder and leads a strong network of women in tech, drawing for an experience as a former woman in tech herself. Preeti is passionate about building dynamic leadership, ensuring leaders elevate their growth and contribute to high impact ecosystems that shape the future of technology, innovation, and executive leadership. Thank you so much, Preeti. Let's all give the panel members a round of applause. And thank you so much for joining in here today. Uh, the session is planned for an hour, out of which 5 minutes are already taken away. We will roughly have a discussion for around 40-45 minutes and keep at least a dedicated time of 10-15 minutes towards the end for question and answers from the audiences. However, I will request that at any point when you get a question, please share your question or comment in the chat, and we will try to include most of them at some part in our discussions. Let's keep this interactive. Let's keep this lively. We can all learn from each other's experiences. It's just that there is a role, and there are some people who are panel members, and some of us are participants. So let's begin. And I was looking at a quote from Tversky and Kahneman, who in 1974 actually wrote that biases are entrenched in the very formation of human cognition. And they serve as cognitive shortcuts that enable individuals to efficiently process vast amounts of information, primarily suggesting that biases do play a very important role in helping us create some shortcuts for decision making and save a lot of time for us. Um, so I want to start by asking, and anyone can start. This is a question to all three of you. What are some typical biases as a coach specifically you have seen, and what has actually caused that bias to happen or be formed?
I can take a shot at it, and then um, so Rajiv, what I feel, and this is my personal opinion, a judge is not only privileged in courts of law. A judge gets privileged even in human encounters and interactions. So we are quick to judge anybody and everybody, right? And that's where, and you're right, it kind of shortens the cognitive power that is required to kind of understand a situation and understand an encounter. But having said that, the kind of bias that I had, and I think this came because I have a preference to, to learn and to know new things and stuff like that. So what I call as the ontological arrogance, that I knew everything, and I quickly, if somebody is like struggling, then I would like judge the person. He or she does not even know this. That's how I started as a novice coach. But what I really realized during my coaching practice is that I learn from every coachee that I have, and it has been sometimes it sounds very um, you know uh, very cliche, but the things that I struggle with is what a coachee brings to my session generally. And it's so beautiful to see that both of us are learning in the session, and I'm a curious learner, and my value of learning, or the interest in learning, kind of goes up. uh, Another bias that I have is this bias of being very reflective and thinking, bias towards thinking, not bias towards action. And many a times I've seen many of my clients have action bias. They are quick to take action and stuff like that. But I have a bias towards thinking. So it's sometimes the session is so beautifully structured that I keep laughing at myself, that this is the bias that I'm showing, and the client is really struggling with the questions or the way the session is going. But then we take a pause and then we say, okay, what is it that we need at this point in time? So these have been some of my experiences. I'll let the other panel members,
Thank you so much.
share.
Jayashri, you wanted to say something on that.
Yeah, so and as you rightly put, Rajiv, but having a bias is very natural, right? We want affinity, so we want to find people who are similar to us. We want to keep ourselves safe, so we want to protect ourselves from danger. So these biases help us quickly judge if there is any danger to us physically, psychologically. So bias have a value in our life, but I found that as a coach, it's really important for me to be aware about the biases that I have. Not necessarily eliminate all biases, because I think that's humanly not possible for any of us to do. So I remember when about 3 years ago, and I have a very recent example, um, where confirmation bias was something that I was struggling with. So about 3 years ago, I got diagnosed as a neurodivergent. And having got diagnosed as an adult, there's a saying, you want to buy a red car, you only find red cars on the road. And then there were several of those clients that, adults that I was meeting, and I was like, they tick all the boxes of neurodivergent. One or two of them did go on to get the diagnosis and it supported them. But I had to be really cautious of, am I now looking for those markers in other people? Because a diagnosis makes such a difference to my life. And in spite of being a psychologist and a psychotherapist, I missed my own diagnosis. So that confirmation bias. So I think as a coach, this constantly being reflective of what is the bias that coming into play at this point of time in my life is a constant journey. I think that's something I wanted to add to what Murli shared so beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Thank you.
both
Yes,
Murli and
Preeti.
both Murli and Jayashree summarized it well, and I'll continue from where Jayashree left, right? The confirmation biases. Uh, I think for me, my coaching journey started with my leadership journey, right? So, especially very early in the career or as a coach, right? I always used to think, because that's how I showed up as well as a leader, that a person who has lack of confidence is probably requires a mind shift in coaching. And this was very early in my career as a coach, right? And this is what one of the biases that I had. And once I met one of the leader who was, very detailed oriented, very he used to, like, think through what it is. And while going through the coaching journey with him, I realized it is not the assertiveness. I mean, what I thought is a lack of confidence. He was somebody who used to think and answer, right? But he was not somebody who would quickly answer. And he was very strategic, was his asset, right? So it is very important as a coach, like what Jayashree said, we need to actually be aware about what we are doing. We should be aware about how we kind of show up, and it's a journey. It's a journey that we take along with the coach. Like that, I like the way Murli also said, in the coaching journey we learn, and it is very sure that we learn as well, right? So it is important that we understand this, right? At that point of time, my confirmation bias led me to the wrong coaching path at first. But as I understood him better, I thought, I think it's a space that I need to give myself here. And the coach job is not to confirm what we believe in, right? And it is important for us to uncover what truly beneath the surface is. And to do that, the biases exist, and I strongly believe biases exist. So, and for that, I think it's a journey, the journey of self-awareness, the journey that we learn. And every session, every conversation helps you to overcome these biases. So I think it's just a conscious awareness, just to ask yourself, what's in play right now? Am I in the service of the client, or is my bias coming in the service, right? So constantly asking that question for yourself kind of helps you to transform your journey as coach.
Great, and that's quite interesting, which leads me to the next question, and maybe you could continue with the same example or path, Preeti. Like, how can your bias impact the entire coaching process? And if you have a example or a real case which you can share with us.
Oh, so I think, as I said, right, your biases definitely will impact the coaching process. As a coach, we assume, especially with leaders, that already no leader struggles, or a leader with a good experience who are coming, they know everything. They are strategic in place, and most of the peer leaders who come for coaching is for developing their excellence and all of that, right? And as coach, you assume the leaders are aware about their struggles, right? Or how they show up. So one of my client, and I'd like to say he was a CXO, and he was very confident in what he was doing, but his decision making was quite slower. And at that point of time, I always thought that probably he's doing whatever the decision making he's doing is lack of his confidence. So that was my bias, right? Because as I said, as a leader that I came in my early career, that I was like confident enough and I believed in that. But whereas for him, it was not that. The fact that his past experiences had made him to be very cautious as well. And and his Lumina personality was also somebody who leaned on to being very cautious and taking very calculated risk. And this came from his past. And during the journey, when we discovered this, there was a shift in my way of coaching him, right? The shift was, now I could understand. Now my bias is that he lacked confidence in making decision was my bias that was coming in was not true. I think it was his past experiences changed, and that shift also helped me to uh, put in the proper provoking question, asking him like, what if you look at the data with the current approach versus your past experience, actually shifted his way of approach. So, your biases also blocks the shifts that is there for your clients as well. So it is very important that as a coach, right, as you said, what comes in the way of coaching, your biases will block you to ask the right question, or will block you to get the conversation deeper with your client, because you're blocking yourself to go further, right? When you are in the process or in the flow, you will need to be as a coach in the flow. For that, it requires a lot of awareness within self, that you're going with the flow to go beneath the surface and go into a deeper conversation. So that was one of the way that it did impact the coaching journey with him. But as I realized that, it was not the lack of confidence, but it was past. There was a shift in me, that me being more aware on making sure I'm not biased. And it also was in service of him. And that's why I keep playing this question most of the time, even in my reflection, is what is in play? What was in play for me when I'm coaching, and what is in play at the service of the client? That kind of helps you to navigate your own biases and what you could learn through those journeys.
Thank you. That's like really interesting. I'm going to ask Murli now, looking at the
So
other part
Rajiv,
of our.
before we go to the next question, I think one of the things that all of us, kind of believe in is bias is always bad, or, it always comes in the way of coaching. May not be. Sometimes it serves the client. I think to what Preeti said, is it in the service of the client? And am I, as a coach, willing to let go of that and make amends, adjustments if it's not working for the client? I think that's the key question. So biases are not generally that can come in the way. So one of the things that I do is the questions or the comments or the observations, where are they coming from? If they're coming from the judge within me, I think they're not useful. So nobody wants to be judged. But if it's coming from a place of a witness, then it's useful, even if it's biased. So like I said, I have a strong bias for thinking and reflection. And for a person who is completely action biased, when questions come from that place, he or she finds it very useful because they are being challenged, they are being questioned. So bias need not necessarily come in the way of being a coach. It can be useful. The question is it serving the client well in the context?
Fair enough. And we will possibly uh, build on that. There is a very interesting question from Shamik. I'll take that later on, but I want to continue with you, Murli. And the one other part of our topic is how does the coach personality, and you've possibly answered partly that, impact or biases that end up happening to the coach? So, what's the relation between personality and biases?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. First, what is personality? I mean, obviously, all of us are certified on multiple tools. Personality is a story that I tell about myself. And these stories are built over time, stories that have been told to me, stories that I've been telling myself. So that's what it is. Change the story, the personality changes. It's not as simple as I'm sounding, but that's what happens actually. So it's important for me to really understand as to what is the story I'm telling myself while in a coaching session, because we're constantly telling stories to ourselves. I think that's very important. So for example, I think one of the things that I struggle with, so my background is in mathematics, lived all my student years or university years in being very rational, being very abstract, right? That's how I lived. But then my coaching practice and my other, engagements have taught me that there is knowing beyond cognition, knowing beyond understanding. There is a felt experience. This is something that I discovered during my practice. Now, it's completely counterculture to my personality. If you really look at my Lumina, I have a big, strong, red on logical, right? So that's what it is. So I do have a preference to be very logical, to be very structured, but I also know that there is a different way of being, and I have experienced it and I've enjoyed it as well. The same person. So it's a question of the story that I tell myself and what kind of a story will help my client, will serve my client well. I think that's the most important part. I think all of us, and this is another thing that I keep telling, that I was watching a Iranian movie, and in the Iranian movie, one of the protagonists talks about, this is the dialogue. The dialogue is, I dislike imperfections, and I'm scared of, perfections. So it's a conundrum all of us struggle with. So the point is, one imperfect being trying to help and support another imperfect being to become perfect, which sounds weird, but that's what it is. Coaching is all about that. So the question is, can I witness my own growth? Can I witness my client's growth in a coaching session? And if I can do that, I can be a good coach.
Great. And just if
Rajiv, is that okay
y-
if I jump in?
come in, yeah, sure.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking about what you were saying. And, for me, before we get into the role of supporting our clients to be where they want to be, as a coach, I first need to meet the clients where they are. And my personality can sometimes come in the way of meeting my clients where they are. It can interfere, with unchecked biases. It can direct the conversation. I can misinterpret a coach's challenge or even diminish their own experience based on what my personality is. And I'll give you an example. Long time back when I was coaching, and this was my first CEO that I was coaching, and I just, submitted my PCC recordings. I hadn't even got my credential PCC yet. I wasn't doing very well on confidence. So, and somewhere into our coaching conversations, I realized that there were a couple of things that I really needed to play that challenging role in the conversation. And And the CEO was what? Leading a 2,500 people organization, very strong, very logical, very structured. And I'm a yellow green. Okay. Um, and so I remember over preparing for my sessions. I had this really, this belief that I have to be as logical, structured as him to be able to match up to, all of these um, popularly called imposter syndrome. There was one thing I didn't know then because I hadn't done my Lumina then, but now I know my red is low. Yeah, the tough is low. And for me, my green is very high. My intuition is very high. When I got it, my logic part also is low. So I could not, I did not have the confidence to kind of challenge him in a constructive, logical manner. Because I kept wanting to match his style of thinking and conversations. And I remember going to my mentor and saying, I'm screwing up. This is my first CEO. I'll never work with CEOs again. I don't have the caliber and all of that. And then, and because I'm also a psychotherapist, I have my own therapist, and going to my therapist also saying, when am I ever going to feel that I'm good enough? All of these conversations. And somewhere, I think it made me realize that my personality has its own inherent strengths. Yeah. The barrier that was coming in the way of that CEO recognizing certain areas because of my ability to connect with them, because of the relational way that I work, over time, he was able to feel safe to lower his guard and acknowledge those areas that he was blind to. I didn't necessarily have to match the logic and tough. Over time, I've learned how to lean in onto that, the red that I need and the blue that I need with practice. But it doesn't come naturally to me. So today, I think post the entire Lumina experience now, I recognize that I have my ways of doing it. But at that point of time, I felt my personality is not conducive for CEO coaching. And that came in the way of the way I turned up for my client.
Beautiful. And let me bring you in this question from Shamik. He says, I'm curious. How do you differentiate between an assumption and a bias right in the moment when you are, and I'm hoping I'm interpreting it correctly, Shamik, or you could correct me. Like you are in the coaching process at that moment in the journey or the dialogue. How do you differentiate between whether you are making an assumption or is it a bias? Is my understanding correct?
That's correct, Rajiv. I was just teeing off from the example that Preeti gave. So she was mentioning about that conversation with the CEO. So I was wondering, I mean, it could be, the way I looked at it, it could also be an assumption or it could be a bias. So that's where that, the question came from. Yep.
I think
Sure.
the way I look at the difference is an assumption is that's what I do. When I'm consciously making an assumption, I present it as an hypothesis to my clients, right? So I say, this is a hypothesis, you can rubbish it if you think it's not right, or if you think it may be true, we can explore it further. That's how I place it. But a bias, I think, is not explicitly called out. You act from that position, right? So for example, a reflective, the one which I do is I really privilege thinking a lot. So which means I have a strong bias towards thinking. And then when I'm asking questions from there, that's not known to the client, right? The client does not know that. And the client is, trying to answer that question. Sometimes the client finds it very funny or weird as to why this question is coming up. So, so that's where the bias comes. Bias is completely internal, and it's my way of acting out in the world, which I think is the right way to do, right? So that's the difference that I can see. I don't know if others have a perspective.
Thank you. And if I may add on this one, my thought process, I think for me, and it's taken a long time to come to this realization that if I can ask a few questions and get some facts or data around it, then I'm treating it as an assumption. When it's a bias, I'm consciously trying to prove the point that I've already made up in my mind. And I'm kind of using phrases or arguments which are, I can, in my own reflection later on, clearly see I was not really too keen to explore. I was too keen to impress that, okay, this is the way it should go. And that's the way I'm trying to today look at it, that not go into the second path, but go into the first path, which is okay. Whatever it is, okay, what's the facts around it? What are some examples around it? And maybe then lead the path open. But it's a very interesting one, and sometimes we don't think in that direction. Lovely. So as we move ahead,
Rajiv, if I
going,
may answer the question,
yes,
the
go ahead.
example that I gave,
Absolutely.
um, uh, in the CEO example, right? I was saying he was very detailed oriented and all of that. So the assumption there, because of his fear of making quick decision, the assumptions what played for the CEO was his past experience, one of his venture failing it out. So that past experience was his uh, assumptions. Right now, when it came to the biases, as a coach, there was a bias that was played, that I was in play there, right? And the bias that I had, because again, I believe the leadership is with confidence and somebody who's not making decision. So that's biases generally are little deep rooted, and it also comes through the wiring, because you're always said you're a strong person if you make decision making, and I'm sure our parents are also said that, right? It is not that it just comes because of our experiences, and so biases are quite deep rooted, right? And assumptions come with past. So in both the cases, I think it requires awareness and self introspection, and as coaches we are, and I think that it takes us through those journey as well. So what was to answer your question, what was in play was is assumptions about the past experience did not allow him to take the risks, whereas the deep failure also actually anchored to some of the failures of his past in the childhood, that he connected it as well, right? And also some of the coaching, as a coach, which I brought in as well. So just shifting the focus, focus, like the way Rajiv very nicely said, questioning those assumptions, questioning those biases, which you get into a deeper conversation, and that is where, as a coach, right, it becomes very. And I also echo what Murli said. None of these biases are right or wrong, or and it is there in its place. It's more about just shifting our focuses, right? Like I said in the beginning, one of the things I consistently ask is, what am I in service of in the client, or is it on my biases, right? So the more you get into the conversation, the more you question the assumptions, help the leaders to guide through the fact, brings in a lot of clarity. And basically this is also a lot of self-awareness. There's also a lot of self-regulation that you need to do, because I know you asked the question in the moment. So that's where the self-regulation will play its role as well. So identifying that becomes very, very critical role. And I think for me, this journey has been with a lot of reflection, which uh, I think as a coach that I have been doing, even as a leader that I have been doing as well, right? I don't know how long I've been journaling. Journaling had been part for me even before the coaching actually started for me. So that I find that as my powerful tool, and there are a lot of reflections that I come in, especially when you journal, and identify, I mean, after the session also, was I in the service? I think that's the primary question that I always have in my journaling book
Thank you
that I
for that.
have.
But let me bring
Can
in
I step in?
Jayashree.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Jayashree, if I can get you in on
Can I
this.
respond to your earlier question? Do we have time? A quick.
We have all the time, The audience doesn't know how many questions I have, neither do you know. So we have all the time on
You
this
are
one.
very
Go
kind,
ahead.
Rajiv.
Yeah.
So I'd like to respond to one nuance of Shamik's question, which is not just the difference between a bias and an assumption, but as a coach in that moment, how can I know, the statement that I'm making? And on the surface, I don't have an easy answer because I think we are human and we do have biases, we do make assumptions. And oftentimes I've found myself in reflection realizing that it was an assumption and a bias. And I might not have the luxury of the reflective space during the coaching. So like Preeti, there's journaling, there is mentoring, and just making notes later where I'm like, gosh, I made a lot of assumption. But there's some things that help me either in the moment or somewhere in that conversation, look back. One is I ask myself, is this something that I believe about an intersectionality? For example, young millennials, urban from in the workforce are disinterested at work and are not millennials, Gen Z, sorry, not millennials, are disinterested and not hardworking and they're flaky. Now, for me, that's a bias that I have about a larger group of people. So that's how I, classify it as a bias. But if I say specifically, this particular client seems to be saying X, Y, Z, and I make a judgment on it, then for me, that's an assumption about that client. That's how I differentiate between an assumption and a bias. Bias is a little bit more pervasive about a context or about a group of people. Now, having recognized that in either which case, I love what you said, Rajiv, is to, and my go-to is to check in with the client, not about my bias, but check in with the client to say, hey, I heard you say this, and I was wondering, what do you mean by that? Or whatever other exploratory question that I have to check on my own, whether it's a bias or an assumption as a way forward. And because I have a huge yellow green, I'm perfectly spontaneous foot in the mouth disease that I have, where I will say, you know what, this thing popped into my mind and I could be wrong. So I'm perfectly comfortable in saying, please tell me if I'm on the right track. So I find that a sense of authenticity because I work with a lot relationally with my coaches. And so for me to bring that authenticity in to say, I'm human, I can get it wrong. I may be making an assumption, but this is what popped into my mind. What do you think about it? That's my go-to style. And I'm still a work in progress on it.
Thank you. So what I've heard till now since we started is, that biases are common, happen to all of us. Biases are not always bad. Some of the biases could actually help us, and some participants have also commented to the same in the chat. Then we looked at how does our personality play a role in some of the biases that happen, and how do we really, at that moment, try to control or manage biases which are not helping the coachee or the process. And the question that I have now, uh, Jayashri, and I would want you to continue. You also use the word in the later part of your answer is. um, so how do you then stay true to your authentic self when you're also trying to control, manage so many things, and be in the moment, diplomatic, tactful, understand, and there is their inside true self of yours, which is also wanting to come out.
Yeah. That's always been a question that's been challenged to me. What exactly is being authentic? Is it about bearing my soul and being the same person everywhere? And I think my own personal definition of authenticity, it's not that I need to be a notion of a real self and be that the same person everywhere. For me, it's about, can I be real? Can I be grounded? And can I be driven by a certain value? For example, I know being that red, the tough, the challenging conflict is not something that comes very easily to me. So the way I tell myself in that moment, for example, is to say, I really am very empathetic. I care deeply for my people. So, which means saying certain things in a certain way is an act of care. So, that's the mindset I want to go with. So, for me, then, what I say and how I say, and if I need to challenge a client, it's still coming from my value of care, and that is authentic. So, if I just try and build a skill of challenging, I know there will be a dissonance between what I say and the affect, my body language, the tone. And the client is going to pick up that nuance somewhere, yeah, the non-verbal part. Now, so as coaches, for me, authenticity is I need to know who I am, and personality, tests like Lumina help me get a feel of who I am. I acknowledge that with the client, and then and for me, then it's not a performance of being a particular kind of coach. To give an example, um, I know that uh, the combination between spontaneity and my ADHD neurodiversity means in the moment, I will offer certain things to the client. I have this resource, I'm happy to email it to you. Sometimes the follow through is not perfect. So for me, in my first chemistry session, I do tell my clients that this is my intent. I might sometimes forget, and this is why I might forget. And I'd really like your help and support in this. If you find that I'm making commitments to you that I'm not keeping through, I would love for you to remind me. If I'm going down a path that is not your goal, I would love for you to challenge me, and I'd like you to partner. So, and so on. So for me, that is authenticity, which is to say, I'm a person like you. I'm not an expert. I'm a work in progress. This is how I'm going to show up. I'm going to work with this together. So that's the relational way from psychotherapy that I bring into coaching. And that is authenticity for me. I don't know if that's the textbook definition. Yeah, but that's me. I don't know if that
Thank
answers
you.
the question.
Murli, you want to add something to that? And I'll also request if there is anything on this topic you may want to add, Murli
Yeah,
or
sure.
Preeti, and we will then, I'm looking at time. I want to open it up to audience for question answers, not miss that
Yeah.
opportunity. We have some very experienced professionals, coaches in the audience, and we can learn from them through their questions and comments also.
Sure. So yeah, I think I completely agree with what Jayashree said. So authenticity means playing the role of a coach in a coaching conversation, being able to play the role without any other interferences, because we play multiple roles, right? So the role interference, if I can keep it aside and just play the role of a coach, I think that's being very authentic. And it's human to make mistakes. It's human to, forget and stuff like that. So I think that's very important. But also the fact is that uh, there is some parts of me, myself, that's really adding value to this relationship. And coaching is a partnership. It's not, we use the word client, but it's a partnership. So when there is a partnership, there is quite a few things of me, myself, in the relationship, right? Um, so what are those things, and how authentically am I presenting? Is the question. I'm not doing things that I'm not capable of. I'm not showing up as a person who can fix everything. I'm not showing up as a person who has answers to all the questions. I'm not showing up as a person who is like infinitely blessed with resources, any resources. I don't, I mean, I can manage any kind of crisis. I'm not God's gift to mankind in that relationship, right? So if it means to be really human and play the role of a coach, I think that's perfectly fine. That would be my authenticity, definition.
Thank you. Preeti, if I can get you for one of my last questions and asking audiences to please open up, you can raise your hand or put the question in chat. But what can a coach do to know their own bias, and how do you then stay above that?
I think what Jayashree said, right? It's the journey. I mean, I'm learning, right? I would rather say is like we all know coach doesn't know all the things, right? So to be start,
It's easy to
yeah.
say here, you know, come on, like,
Yeah,
let's be
but
honest, you
I think
know.
it's no. I'm answering your question, Rajiv. It's a journey, and for me, because I do a lot of biases workshops as well as intersectionality workshop, is what I would say is, you will need to identify what works with you very well, right? Like Murli, I'm a person who's very reflective. So I will probably be right now biased towards reflection through journaling because that's where that's helped me. And it again comes as a biases, and some biases are good. So the bias being on journaling has actually helped me, right? In this case, right? It is about always I mean, and it for me it is always being recording or journal reflecting how am I coming through, or how, most importantly, am I judging myself, right? Am I judging myself? And like the way Murali said, there is this partnership that is in play, right? There is this consistent partnership. uh, is the client hesitant to open up, fearing judgment? And am I showing that up in the space, in this space, in this relationship space? How do I come through? And the fact that my luminas is, I think Rahul also knows it, is like all force high, right? It does it play its advantage? Yes, it does, because you're more adaptable and I'm there all. But at the same time, it drives my energy a lot, because the fact that I'm more flexible, I'm more adaptable, being playing all red, green, and all the colors at the point of it. So I identify these part of it. Is my energy playing low or is my energy playing high? As I use the journaling as the tool. And in fact, I was like telling somebody recently, as I have like multiple journals that I have, right? One, and be honest, part of it is like whether it is like how am I serving the client as a coaching journal, or how am I serving as a person for my child, my husband, in that relationship or the partnership. Uh, and all days are not the same day. All coaching moments are not the same coaching moments. What worked with one client will never work with another client, right? So it's a consistent journey where you reflect, understand. And when you make this reflection, Rajiv, going to the point that, how can you be aware on the moment? The consistent reflection is the one which comes and strikes back at you during the moment. Hey,
Okay, I'm going to
this is
interrupt
where
you
you
there.
have to
Sorry.
catch
I'm
yourself.
going to interrupt you there and share, because I think, and it's a personal example, it's taken me a long time.
Yes.
And I think many times, at least initially when I started my coaching journey, and mm, when you go through ACC training and all, there is a structure they give you. Goal setting should happen, and then some solutions should be generated. And before we close, the next action should be agreed upon and stuff like that. And by nature, I'm someone who is goal driven and action driven. So I really love that structure. You have 60 minutes, break them down like this, like this, like this. And if for some reason the coachee was not able to define the goal in 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes, instead of my asking them repeatedly, what's your goal? What exactly you wish to achieve? Uh, I would have my own thoughts about coachee's seriousness on the coaching process per se. And I never considered that as a bias. I would strongly keep justifying it logically. That, if in 2 sessions the person can't even define the goal, it took a long time for me to acknowledge that it was a bias I was carrying, and it was not really like people have different styles. But I'm saying it is sometimes uh, we continue to justify our biases rather than acknowledging that that's a bias, because
Yeah.
there is so much of past experience around that we are carrying amongst us. But I'll take a pause. I'm looking at the time. I really want to give
Yeah.
audience a
Maybe I might
chance
add a
to ask.
little bit.
You can continue speaking, but someone who wants to ask the first question can raise your hand. Go ahead, please. You conclude and
Yeah.
then.
So just to add to your point, Rajiv, like as I said, all my force are high, right? And the fact that you were saying you were action oriented, right? Because I become more flexible based on the client when the client doesn't get on the goal. So the flexibility itself adds to the point. So after 2 sessions, I try to nudge and nudge. So at a point you will have to. So your action kind of place, it will be well placed when it comes to my flexibility there, right? So it's the balance, and there is no right answer for it. As I said, it's a journey and it takes a long time. If you ask where are you in the journey, I would say no, I don't know. Right? But
Thank you. Thank you so much.
but I definitely know I'm in a good journey path or something. And one
Okay.
of the things at the ACC times, I remember this, when the first coaching session we got this head, heart, and hands for us to reflect as a template. I was so thrilled about it because I'm somebody who would journal, so that's the bias that create there, part of it, right? Yeah, all these are in play, but I think it's
Okay.
just a journey.
Great. So Rakesh has a question, and I'm going to start with that. Which Rakesh is asking, we have conscious and subconscious biases. Both need different management approaches, isn't it? If any one of you would like to take it, or Rakesh, you want someone specific to answer, or anyone can take that.
No,
It's also
anyone
in the
can
chat.
answer because
Okay.
we do not know what we don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah, we assume that we know everything about ourselves, and that's like fooling ourselves. And in corporate world, we see hell lot of subconscious, unconscious biases. For example, I'm working here in Germany, surrounded by German colleagues. Yeah, they do have subconscious biases about people coming from India, which they are not even aware of.
Hmm.
So it happens in day-to-day work. It happens in coaching. So I had an executive coach from UK, an English guy, and he has different approach and biases because of his knowledge about the colonial background, etc. Germans have different, and within India, we'll have biases, whether you're coming from north, south, east, west. It's a continent in itself. So how do we overcome these biases? And I'm not saying that biases are bad, as someone already mentioned.
Hmm.
Jayashree, you raise your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Rakesh, it's a lovely question. It appeals to both the coach and the therapist in me. How do we know what we don't know? Um, so there are, in the examples that I heard, there is one part that I heard which is about cultural sensitivity biases. Yeah, and those are more addressed at a systemic organizational level on one hand, and those that are impacted by it, in a conversation that we raise and talk about those biases. I'm coming to the other nuance where we as leaders or as coaches, how do we recognize that I have these unconscious biases? And for me, uh, 360 degrees, personality assessments, all of them that give me a feedback of me is a lens. To give an example, there was a particular assessment that I had done on which there is a pessimism versus optimism scale. And I am somebody who thought of myself as absolutely optimistic. I mean, pessimism and optimism is not the words that you thought they use, but that's what I'm using here. Okay, because I thrive on change. I've changed 24 houses, I've changed 10 careers. So for me, it's like, why am I not adaptable to change? Something is not right with this. And I was debating it with my debriefers so much. Then in conversation, I realized that when I love structure, contrary to what I thrive on, so my first reaction to change is, oh no. And then sometimes in 2 minutes, sometimes in 2 hours, I was like, what needs to get done? And I'm the one getting everybody along on the change path. Yeah. But my first response instinctively is, oh no, and why? And the questionnaire threw that up for me. And I wasn't aware about that. Yeah. And none of my ecosystem is aware either, because they're like, you're the most optimistic person. But the transition between oh no and let's see what I can do, that journey only I know, and the toll that it takes from me. And therefore, when I hear in my, let's say, team conversation, somebody is suggesting radically different things, I know my facial expression changes in that moment, or at least I figured out after that, because that oh no shows up as an expression at that first instant. And if the team member is not strong enough to stand up to me, they keep quiet. And that is something after that survey that I had done, and then the 360 degrees that came after that was like, is this what I'm communicating to my team? And they need to be strong enough to continue, otherwise I'm shutting them down with that expression. So to cut it short, I think one is personality assessments, but the larger question that you were talking about is more cultural sensitivity, organization-wide interventions, I guess, and a personal conversation and trying to bridge those gaps. I don't know if I answered that question enough, Rakesh, but that's my thought.
Well, I think
Thank you.
that was awesome. Thank you very much. Very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you. And I am looking at the time. I am someone who is quite, so I know there may be more questions, and if some of the panel members are okay, I am happy staying after the allotted time and continuing with that with some audiences. But for the larger audiences, I want to play my role as a moderator and say a great formal thank you to all the participants first for being here, attentive, and putting in some great comments and questions in the chat. And for all the three panel members, thank you so much. What I really liked was your own personal experiences from the heart and not really a lot of textbook answers on some of these phrases. And some of the statements that you made, I'm going to definitely remember, like things that I struggle with, my coachee brings to the session that Murli said right in the beginning, or your bias will block you from asking right questions, or, how do you get in reflection, we get insights. No, these are simple statements, but the more you think about it, the more powerful they become. So I think it's been fantastic for me personally, and I thank you all. I am also remembering a old Hindi couplet from Ghalib, which is at least true for unproductive biases that we may have. And it said, उम्र भर गालिब यही भूल करता रहा, धूल चेहरे पर थी और आईना साफ करता रहा. So I think as a coach, let's clear the dust on our faces first, and hopefully maybe the vision or the view will change to the other party. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on a weekday in the afternoon for this lovely session. This session has been recorded, and all those who registered would also get a recording. Thank you, Lumina India, for making this happen. I know a lot of people who have joined personally. I'm sorry if I've not been able to personally acknowledge, but we can surely connect. And I'm still going to be here. I'll be the last one to drop off. If anyone still has any question, more than happy. You have an experience, still here to learn. But thank you so much, Jayashree, Preeti, Murli, all the audiences and the Lumina India team. Have a great day, great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Rajiv. You've been an amazing moderator.
Okay, I can see some comments now. Alka, you have a question, feedback, comment? You've been look very reflective, thoughtful.
Yes, I think I thoroughly enjoyed the whole session and totally agree with Murli, Jayashree and Preeti. All the three panelists, I think, brought about three different aspects, and I was nodding and resonating and seeing myself, and in the end, I think, Rajiv, how you ended it saying that we are our mirror. So first we need to cleanse ourselves more and more. And that's what I think all the three panelists are also saying, like Preeti.
I'm good at copy pasting, Alka, so no problem.
No. It's not about copy pasting. It's about bringing it here in the context, right? And that's how we resonate with each other, is community meets. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good
Thanks.
for you. Catch up. Thank you.
See, the only thing that I'm left with is, all I can rely on is my experience, and that's limiting. Because if I'm not experienced something, then I really don't know what it is. So experience is useful and it's also limiting. And uncovering unconscious bias is a task by itself, because you have to really experience, you have to have those encounters, right? Unless you experience that, it's very difficult for you to really know that you have this bias. So encounters, when I say encounters, meeting people, talking to them, being with people, I think is important. And being with yourself is a very important part. Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Rajiv.
Murli.
Yeah.
Your one-liners were great, you know. Thank you, Ripudaman, you know. And for those of you who may not know, Ripu is Anjani's colleague. I hope some of you from Lumina team know that, but Ripu
Yeah.
is
Okay.
Anjani's
Oh, man.
colleague.
Everyone.
Good.
I got a message from Anjani. She's really remiss. She almost like in a complaining way sent, "You're doing all these webinars. I'm stuck. I can't make them." I said, "There's only one way to punish this, that you have to run the next one." But guys, really, so
Okay,
much little
okay.
nuggets like what Rajiv said, just little reminders, each one. So thank you. I
Yeah.
mean, everybody just shared from the heart.
Yeah.
Rajiv, really very well, beautifully handled together. Great,
Yeah.
great webinar. Fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Simran. If you are still there and you can listen to me, he's an old friend again.